Hello, sixth graders. Today we are going to be working on lesson 12.2. So in your table of contents, if you would add lesson 12.2, and we'll just abbreviate the title of it to be Independent and Dependent Variables. And I think it should be pages 75 and 76 in your notebook. Okay, to set up your page, you're going to need three sections. The middle section needs to be the largest, and the top will be the smallest. So you're just going to go all the way across with three sections like I have here. In box number 1, we're just going to write down two definitions, and they're a little bit confusing, but I think once we look at numbers, once we start putting numbers and letters in there, it will make more sense. So the first definition is a dependent variable. And a dependent variable is the quantity that depends on the other quantity. Then the independent variable is the quantity the dependent variable depends on. And like I said, it should make more sense as we work along, but just write it down for now. In box 2, I need you to write down this problem. A train moves at a constant speed. The distance in miles that the train has traveled after X hours is shown in the table. So in the table we have time, which is in hours, which is what the H stands for, and we'll call that X. And so in hours we have 0, 1, 2, or 3 hours. Then for distance, those are in miles, and we'll call those Y. We'll call the distance Y. If the train travels 0 hours, it goes 0 miles. If it travels 1 hour, it goes 50 miles. If it travels for 2 hours, it goes 100 miles. And if it travels for 3 hours, it goes 150 miles. So that's the relationship between the time and the distance. So go ahead and draw the table, and then write the questions. So question A says, what are the two quantities? Well, the two quantities that we're dealing with are time and distance. So you're just going to write that in there and underline it. So I'm going to say time, comma, distance. I'm sorry, it's kind of a mess there, but that should be time and distance. Then for B, it says the distance traveled depends on the amount of time. So what equals the dependent variable? Okay, so basically we want to know what the dependent variable is. And the dependent variable is going to be the distance because it depends on the amount of time. So if they go 1 hour, the train goes 50 miles. If it goes 2 hours, it goes 100 miles. And if it goes 3 hours, it goes 150 miles. So the distance traveled depends on the amount of time. So distance equals the dependent variable, which we'll abbreviate with dv. Then the time does not depend on the distance because we're really looking more at, how far the train goes. So because the time doesn't depend on the distance, it's the other way around, that means time is the independent variable. And we'll abbreviate that with IV. So then to create an equation, we would say the distance is y. So the distance, which is what we're looking for, equals the distance per hour times the time. So distance is y and equals the distance per hour, which is 50 miles per hour, times the number of hours, or the time, which gives you 50 times x. So y equals 50x is the equation. In box number 3, we're going to do one together. And so you need to write this down. A boat rental shop rents paddle boards for a fee, plus an additional cost per hour. The cost of renting for different numbers of hours is shown in the table. And they're asking you to identify what is the dependent variable and what is the independent variable. So if you look at this chart, which I didn't quite finish up, I need to create my boxes. There we go. If you look at this chart, you have time in hours, and you have either 0, 1, 2, or 3 hours. And then you have the cost, which is in dollars. $10, $11, $12, or $13. So as you can see, there's a $10 flat fee. But for every additional hour, they add $1. So if you go for 1 hour, it costs you $11. 2 hours is $12, and 3 hours is $13. So the cost of your boat, of your paddle boat, depends on how long you rent it for. If you rent it for 1 hour, it's going to be $11. If you rent the paddle boat for 2 hours, it will be $12. And if you rent it for 3 hours, it will be $13. So the cost depends on the time you rent. Because of that, the dependent variable is the cost. Therefore, the independent variable, the one that doesn't depend on the other, is time. And so that's basically it for this lesson. It's not a really long lesson, but we'll be doing some more work with it and doing some more examples in class. So this is what your paper should look like when you're finished. And other than that, we are done. So good job.